The US dollar has ruled the world for more than 80 years. Since 1944 it has been the backbone of global trade, the weapon of American sanctions, and the cornerstone of US economic power. But here in 2025, that dominance is under direct attack. President Trump has just threatened 100% tariffs on some of the world's fastest-growing economies unless they stop what he calls a war on the US dollar. His words were clear. It's an attack on the dollar and we're not going to let anybody attack the dollar. But this time, the challenge isn't coming from small economies. It's coming from BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and a growing number of powerful new members. Together, they now represent more than half of the world's population and nearly half of global GDP. Two of those members, India and Brazil, are already being hit with tariffs as high as 50% on billions of dollars worth of exports to the US. Their response? To fight back, matching tariffs, redirecting trade, and accelerating their push to break free from the dollar. This is the story of how BRICS just declared economic war on the US dollar and what it means for your savings, investments, and everyday cost of living. BRICS isn't just a group of developing nations anymore. These are the world's major emerging economies. They've grown far beyond simple agriculture or resource exports. Brazil is moving beyond commodities into industry and services. Russia, rich in oil and gas, is pushing to diversify. India is rapidly transforming into a global hub for tech and manufacturing. China has gone from a closed system to the world's second-largest economy, now leading in global manufacturing. South Africa remains the most industrialized economy on the African continent, despite inequality challenges. And the bloc is growing. In 2024, 4 new nations joined. In 2025, Indonesia officially entered, with 9 more countries knocking on the door. Together, BRICS now accounts for over 2/3 of the world's population and nearly half of global GDP, outpacing the G7 nations of the US, Japan, Germany, the UK, France, Italy, and Canada. The bigger they become, the more power they have to fight the dollar system that has defined the world economy for decades. The shift gained speed after the US weaponized the dollar to sanction Russia. That move sent a powerful message to every other BRICS nation. If it could happen to Russia, it could happen to them. Between 2021 and 2024, trade among BRICS nations grew by over $700 billion, and much of that trade no longer uses the US dollar. For the first time in history, China's overseas transactions in yuan have overtaken the dollar. Back in 2020, over half of China's trade was settled in dollars. By 2025, that balance flipped, with more than 50% now done in yuan. The same trend is showing up in banking. Southeast Asia's largest lender, DBS, reported a 30% increase in yuan settlement flows last year, especially in trade between China, Latin America, and the Middle East. Even in the real economy, the shift is clear. In Brazil, Ford car lots are now dominated by Chinese BYD electric vehicles. These cars are being paid for in local currencies, bypassing the dollar entirely. Each transaction is one more step toward de-dollarization. To counter this, the US has imposed massive tariffs. Brazil faces 50% tariffs on its exports. India faces 25%. But instead of dividing BRICS, these moves are uniting them. India, once a close US ally, has announced it will stop buying American weapons. Brazil has filed a formal complaint at the World Trade Organization. Both are redirecting trade toward other BRICS partners and pushing harder for non-dollar payment systems. Even more surprising, India's Prime Minister Modi and China's Xi Jinping, leaders who rarely agree on anything, are now rebuilding economic ties. At the latest BRICS summit in Rio, Brazil's President Lula openly called for testing a new BRICS currency to directly challenge the dollar. The immediate cost of tariffs could hit American consumers hard. Economists estimate up to $56 billion every year in higher prices, on electronics, cars, and everyday goods. On the export side, US companies stand to lose billions in sales to BRICS markets, including agriculture, tech, and aircraft industries. And with BRICS controlling critical commodities like rare earth metals, oil, and agricultural staples, any restrictions could hit US supply chains directly. But the longer-term threat is even bigger. If BRICS keeps trading in yuan, rupees, rubles, or a new shared currency, global demand for the US dollar will fall. That means fewer countries holding US treasuries. Already, foreign ownership of US debt has dropped to around 30%. If it continues to decline, interest rates will rise, making it more expensive to finance US deficits, and more expensive for Americans to borrow. The dollar's dominance has been a powerful advantage for decades. It has allowed the US to import goods cheaply, borrow money at lower interest rates and maintain global influence through sanctions. But as BRICS builds alternative systems, those advantages are eroding. Gold and Bitcoin are already seeing inflows whenever headlines about BRICS currency plans hit the news. Bond yields have turned volatile, and emerging economies around the world are watching closely, deciding whether to align with Washington or with BRICS. This doesn't mean the dollar will collapse overnight, but the world is shifting. For investors and ordinary Americans, the key question is, how do you protect yourself in a world where the dollar is no longer untouchable? Some are diversifying into assets like gold and Bitcoin. Others are watching interest rates and treasury yields closely. Many are simply trying to stay diversified across stocks, real estate, and cash, so that no matter how the global system changes, they're not caught off guard. The US dollar has had nearly a century of dominance. But in 2025, BRICS is openly challenging that position. Tariffs, retaliations, new payment systems, and even a potential shared currency all point toward a world where American financial power is weaker than before. What do you think? Will BRICS succeed in rewriting the rules of global finance, or will the dollar remain king? If you found this breakdown useful, make sure to subscribe for more insights on the global economy. The world is changing fast, and the dollar's future may depend on what happens next.